Welcome everyone to today's Simple Pay Health webinar on open enrollment. Best practices from over 200 open enrollment meetings. That's right. I like to jokingly say that I'm the only doctor in America who has literally presented at over 200 open enrollment meetings in person. I'm not even counting the online ones that I did. So now, believe it or not, open enrollment is actually an exercise in marketing. It's actually one of the reasons why I love employee benefits is because it actually requires us, we're almost like decathletes. We're not like experts in one thing, but we got to be pretty good at like multiple things. And frankly, one of the things that we need to be good at in employee benefits is marketing, because open enrollment, you are marketing the health insurance plan to the employees. And in fact, one of the more innovative employers, it was a huge nationwide retailer that we worked with at Compass. Their benefits department, their head of benefits, actually hired a marketing firm to design a marketing strategy with the content and the imagery and and with the segmentation across the employees. They hired a marketing firm to help them actually market the health plan to the employees, because her philosophy was the employees will never appreciate their benefits unless they understand their benefits. And so we're going to talk about marketing today, specifically for open enrollment. And marketing is not some like arts and crafts, mumbo jumbo, just, sort of thing. Marketing is a science, and marketing has a methodology. And there is absolutely objective good marketing, and there is objective poor marketing. And so there is something in marketing that is referred to as the marketing equation. And that equation is interrupt, engage, educate, offer. And so literally, when I go through open enrollment, when I go through all communications, both to the employees and to employers, et cetera, in my mind, I go through this formula of, okay, interrupt, engage, educate, offer, interrupt, engage, educate, offer. So we're going to again go through each of these four parts of the marketing equation as it relates to open enrollment. So first, what is interruption? Interruption is answering what's in it for me. So this is honestly, what I'm about to tell you is probably the most important thing I'm going to say in the entire webinar. So if you don't listen to anything else, listen to this. You can't educate or market to anyone until you get their attention. So getting their attention is job number one. Now, our brains function in two states. They are referred to alpha asleep and beta awake. And believe it or not, our brains subconsciously put ourselves into alpha asleep mode a lot during the day so that we're not overwhelmed with information. Perfect example is, for those of you that drive to work, many of you drive to work, and by the time you get to work, you have no idea how you got to work because you weren't paying attention. You were alpha asleep. You passed various other models of cars. You passed various billboards. You did all sorts of things. You probably weren't even paying attention to where you had to turn left or right because you've done it so many times that you are in alpha asleep mode. The only way that we can educate people about open enrollment is when, or market to them about anything, is when we snap their brains out of alpha asleep to beta awake, where you're actually then focusing on something. So examples of things that are snap, and we're going to get into more detail, things like you do an active enrollment. You're talking about a new plan. You're answering that, what is in it for me, literally within split seconds of that person's attention span. Okay, so fine. Next is engage. Okay, we always hear the time about employee engagement. Okay, for the sake of marketing, the word engagement has a very specific meaning. Engagement means to keep people's attention. You can get somebody's attention, but believe it or not, first impressions, right? So you get somebody's attention, that person immediately has a first impression about a billboard, about anything. Okay. That first impression is established in 50 milliseconds. Okay. Now, we're going to talk about using specifically human faces to keep people's attention, because our brains are naturally wired to be interested in and pay attention to the human face. We are subconsciously wired to be fascinated by human faces. Human faces are like the most fascinating thing we can look at. So we need to leverage biology with alpha and beta, and we need to leverage biology with human faces to maximize our open enrollment experience. So fine, you've interrupted, you engaged. Now you have to educate, and that education it has two things. It's specific and helpful. Specific and helpful. In open enrollment, you can engage about a gazillion things, right? Health insurance policies are incredibly complicated. But when you educate, that education needs to be specific and helpful. Now, finally, there is the offer, which is sometimes referred to as the call to action. Okay, and that offer can be a low risk offer or it can be a high risk offer. And obviously, people are more interested in low risk offers as opposed to high risk offers. And we're going to talk about the difference between the two. All right, next slide, please. So, answering what's in it for me. Okay, so here, essentially, it's about writing a headline. Okay, so like literally the very first words that come out of your mouth, whether you're doing an in-person presentation or you're doing a virtual presentation or you're recording a video, or it might even say this on the front of the employee benefits packet that you're giving to people or through their employee benefits web portal, if you're using a web portal, is this sentence: you won't have benefits next year unless you enroll. Okay, that headline needs to be about 5 to 10 words. Note, it has the word you. Starting a sentence with the word you is incredibly powerful. Now, engage using faces. Okay, again, I told you faces are hugely engaging. So in your presentations, use faces as much as possible. Do not, I pray to you, do not use a stethoscope with a dollar sign. Like all the money healthcare imagery is so bad. Like, don't use it. Use people's faces. Okay. Yeah, what's even better? Use pictures of people who are actually at your company. Like, if you can actually get employees to take their pictures, and like you're like, oh, I can't get the people's pictures. Dude, take pictures of people in the HR department. Be like Sally or John, come on over here. I'm going to take your picture, because the authenticity of the picture is hugely important. Because during open enrollment, what you're doing is you're establishing trust, and establishing trust through non-stock photos. In other words, sincere, authentic photos of people who are actually in the company, both consciously and subconsciously, establishes trust. Okay, go one step further. Video establishes trust and engages much better than static photos. So there have been lots of studies on this. People remember 80% of what they watch in a video, and they only remember 10% of what they read. So literally the difference between video and static is the difference between 80% and 10%. It's an 8x difference, because our eyes are very good at picking up motion. Our eyes are designed to pick up motion. So when you look at this woman's face right here with a hat, it doesn't have any motion. It's still. So literally the fact that my mouth is moving and my head is moving engages people, because our eyes they love motion. Our eye, that, we see something out of the corner of our eye. Why? Because it's moving. If something is in the corner of our eye and it's not moving, we don't notice it, because our eyes and our brains are programmed to pay attention to motion. All right, now educate. The education needs to be specific and helpful. Now, I've made a previous AHealthcareZ video that explains that the number one characteristic that determines how a person uses healthcare and health insurance is their age. So in order for information at open enrollment to be specific and helpful, it needs to be tailored to the listener, whether it be the employee or the spouse. It needs to be tailored to the listener's age. So, believe it, brokerages do this. And they have a particular brokerage in Houston that I worked with did this, and they said it was wildly successful. Okay, so what does that mean for people in their 20s? People in their 20s, this might be the first time they've ever had health insurance. And maybe they've had health insurance, but maybe only for a couple of years, and they really weren't paying attention to what their health insurance was about. They don't, and they were on their parents' plan before, like they don't know. Like the very basics of like a deductible, a copay, coinsurance, right? I made a previous AHealthcareZ video that only 4% of Americans can accurately define the basic concepts of a health insurance plan, like a deductible, a copay, and coinsurance. Like at a very basic level, the people in their 20s, you just need to explain to them how it works. Now, people in their 30s, you wouldn't want to do that because, like, listen, I've been listening to this for 10 years. You don't need to explain to me the basics of a deductible, copay, and copay necessarily. But for people in their later 20s and in their 30s, what are they concerned about? Like, what's the number one cause of hospitalization in America is labor and delivery. It's having a baby. And so, like, if people in their 30s are using the hospital, whether it be the man or the woman in the family unit, is maternity and pediatric coverage, because kids get sick all the time. So in your 30s, you want to focus on, okay, how does the insurance cover maternity and pediatric care, stuff that kids need? Okay. And then finally, in your 40s to 60s, oh, shoot, that's me. I'm in my 40s. That's when the wheels start coming off and you start having to go to all these different ologists, right? And so you can't sit there and just educate people in their 40s to 60s about the basics of a deductible and maternity, because they'll be like, look, I've gone through menopause. That really isn't an issue for me. Okay. But this is where it's incredibly important to have connection with a primary care doctor. Only half of plan members have actually seen a primary care physician in the previous 2 years. You're like, go see your primary care doctor. Newsflash, half the people on the plan don't have a primary care doctor. So just like talking about how you would establish care with a primary care doctor and why it's important to do so, that would be a great topic. Okay, how do you find high value specialists? You need to go see all these ologists. All these ologists are not the same. How do you find the right ologist for you? You start using your prescription medication coverage a lot more. How does the prescription medication coverage work? How can you minimize your out-of-pocket costs with your prescription medications? And then anybody who starts going to doctors and having tests and procedures, they have to, quote unquote, navigate the healthcare system. They're going to start getting a lot of bills and EOBs. It's hugely confusing, okay? So we would have software firms and microchip firms and engineers with PhDs who were in their 40s to 60s, and they started having to have healthcare because the wheels started coming off. And they're like, this is a horrible experience. And they would tell me this because I'm a doctor at an open enrollment meeting. They wouldn't necessarily go to their HR department and say that because, like, they didn't want to be seen as a whiner or a complainer, or they were just busy and they didn't have time. But they would be like, doc, it was really bad. And these people's time is incredibly valuable. I mean, they're literally spending time and worry that frankly, they should be spending on designing microchips and writing software code. And they have to spend time dealing with all this stuff. It's a huge detriment to your organization. Okay, so next slide. So then let's talk about the offer, the call to action. So every single open enrollment meeting has a specific call to action. What do I do now? You enroll. Well, guess what? There's open enrollment platforms out there, but honestly, a great place to do research is the open enrollment platforms for ACA plans, for Obamacare plans, because they have to deal with literally millions of people going through open enrollment. And so I encourage you, I have no connection to Health Sherpa. Go to healthsherpa.com, okay? They are like the number one enrollment platform for ACA Obamacare plans. So you better believe they have gone through as much iteration and strategic thinking as possible. Focus groups, like literally like measuring where people's eyes are looking on the web page to create the easiest consumer experience possible for enrolling in health insurance. You don't actually have to sign up for the health insurance. You can just pretend like you're going to sign up for the health insurance and go through the Health Sherpa process. And I'll be honest with you, it's pretty easy. And I'll be honest with you again, it's probably 10 times better than any employer-sponsored enrollment process that I have ever been through.